Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on what part of the world you are in. This is the Big Girl Diary. Um, I have some additional thoughts on this conflict in Russia between Ukraine and Russia. Now, I've been reading some outside sources because you never really get the truth. Like I look at the different newspapers in here, and they're only giving one perspective, and I like seeing things from both sides. And talking to people out in the street, tensions are very high. And if you if you're not, I'm not pro anything, but I would like to hear what Putin has to say. I hear a lot from Zelensky, and I think what he's going through is horrible. I mean, it's really horrible. But I'm looking at the events as they are unfolding, and they're unfolding quickly. Now, this conflict has been brewing for a very, very long time. This just didn't come out of nowhere. Um, After World War, what, two, and even within the 90s, when the late 80s, when Russia, thank you so much, was broken up and they lost a lot of their land. Hmm. Um, they lost a lot of land. And when they lost that land, from my readings, is that as long as they weren't a part of the United Nations, then it would be okay. And Russia is an isolationist, not so much of an isolationist, but it's should I say they don't want to be a part of the EU, or I'm sorry, NATO, and they don't want to have a lot what's going on in other European countries because Russia's very, very, very conservative and religious at that. And when I'm looking at the Ukraine one part is very, very pro-European, and they want to break out and do what a lot of other Europeans are doing. Other part of Ukraine is like, nah, just give me my newspaper and coffee, I'm okay. And the Western part is like, hey, I want to go to the club and go dance to the new beat out, just to give you some idea. Now, as I said before, this conflict just didn't come out of nowhere. It's been brewing. Now, I looked at this documentary um, it's called The Winter of Fire. When I saw what happened in Ukraine during 2013, the Poshenko, I believe that's his name, he was going to sign with the United Nations to be a part of the European Union. Now, that right there is going to be a direct conflict with Russia by them being so close, Ukraine being so close to Russia, and where Kyiv is, and you could shoot a missile and just decimate Moscow. So I do understand Putin's worries about that. But Poshenko was supposed to sign with the European Union, and then the very next day, 180-degree turn. And as I'm looking at this documentary, the people were fighting, the Ukrainians were fighting, and as you're able to see that there was really actions of Ukrainians. That was um, the Russian speaking Ukrainians, and then you had the Ukrainians speaking Ukrainians. And the Ukrainian speaking Ukrainians wanted to be westernized. And the Russian speaking Ukrainians did not want to be westernized. Oh man, this ambulance did not want to be westernized. They wanted to stay the way they were. Not all of the Russian speaking Ukrainians, but a large number of them wanted to keep things the way it was. So as I see this unfolding quickly, with the people trying to escape, the people from other countries that were in Ukraine getting an education, got a rude awakening. They really got their wake-up call, realized exactly what status they really were. That was quite interesting to watch. And talking to my friends from African countries, and I'm like, you got your token card reversed, revoked. Now you know what Black Americans go through, and you can't ever say that racism isn't real because you're facing it and you see it all over the news. But I digress. What I find astounding is this. They're able to use the word genocide so quickly. It's like genocide, 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 genocide. But when it's other countries, they don't want to say the G word. They want to say fighting, internal conflict, but not genocide. But and this is what I'm thinking about why they're using the word genocide. A couple of different reasons, but I'm just going to just stick to one or maybe two. There were some Ukrainians that spoke English, and they were abundantly clear in what they were saying. They were saying blonde hair, blue-eyed people were getting killed. And then you had the newscasters that try to hurry up and quickly to clean up what he was saying. Look, the man said what he said, and that's it. Blonde hair and blue-eyed people were getting killed. I wasn't shocked, but I was like, the man's off code. He's off code. He was supposed to stick to the talking points about the invasion and whatever the guy said, but the man got off code and he told the truth. Blonde hair and blue-eyed people were getting killed. Women were crying. Blonde hair, blue-eyed women, they were crying. Their husband. That right there would get people's emotions. Not. Let me just. And now Zelensky, President Zelensky, got a what do you call it? A forum with the European Union, and was able to give his grievances so quickly to the United Nations. And now now they're fast tracking his membership with the European Union. And I don't know whether if it's because Zelensky comes from a particular ethnic group. You can't say anything because then you'll have all kinds of stuff, lose your channel and everything. So I got to be careful in what I say. He comes from a particular ethnic group, and things are moving quickly. Now let me go back a little bit because I think I went a little offline, off my train of thought. In the Winter of Fire, there was a lot of fighting, a lot of internal fighting, because the Ukraine fell into a civil war. And it was a battle between the separatist Russian Ukrainians, and then you have the Ukrainians speaking Ukrainians. And and the Russian Ukrainians, based on the other information that I got from other documentaries, was that you had groups like Azov, and I can't remember the other name of the group, that they had a tendency to be very right-winged, pro-Ukraine, very pro-Ukraine, and I have no problem with nationalism. You should have pride in your country. But to me, not so much to where you would have a certain rhetoric to other people within that country, but also to act out your thoughts about other people. Now, what I found interesting was Azov was over here in the United States training with the military over here. And the United States was with Azov, and you know, the U.S. is great being ace boom coon with other people, train them, and then when the wind blows, the U.S. is like, now you're a terrorist. That's just how the U.S. is. And once other countries understand that, you'll be in a better position, whichever way the U.S. decides to go. You're great friends as long as you're doing their bidding. But once they don't need you anymore, they cut ties. So Azov is a right-wing, allegedly a right-wing racist military group that now was a volunteer military group. And now they're a part of the Ukrainian military. And with all that fighting, because you have a whole lot of things going on there, a whole lot of plates spinning at the same time. The Russian Ukrainians, from what I've read, and from some of the documentaries and videos that I have seen over since 2013 and 14 up until today, have been targeted and were killed. But you don't hear anything about that. You only hear about what's going on, what Russia is doing to the Ukraine. Now, I said in the previous video that you never, even someone insane has a reason for doing what they did. They just go off and attack someone, but they had a reason. Now, I'm not pro-Russian and I'm not pro-Ukrainian. I'm just simply an observer. And right now, I only see one side hitting the ball, one narrative, but I'm not hearing the other. But, you know, I have been able to get additional information going on from the Russian side. And the Russian side was saying was that, remember I put redozone.com and you go to those newspapers? Russia was saying, hey, wait a minute, you were killing Russians and you're getting in, aligning yourself with the EU and the United Nations. And one of the parts were that you don't do that because it's going to cause big problems. And they were doing it anyway. And I said in the previous video was that when the war first broke out, and I remember this, I was watching Fox 5, and really, I don't know why I was watching, but I'm glad I did, because Fox 5 is nothing but pure propaganda, but they let it slip. I heard it. They let it slip. They said when the war first broke out, the CIA was in Ukraine. CIA is always doing something. Those of us call the CIA, some people say criminals in action. Some people say some other things. I'm just putting it politely. Or as polite as as polite as I can put it. Now, I was watching the other day that President Zelensky was able to get a forum with the United Nations and bringing up charges on President Putin for war crimes and genocide. Like I said, I think it's only because he's a part of a certain ethnicity or a certain ethnic group that he's able to get this done. When you look at other countries like Rwanda, not even called Rwanda anymore, when people were getting killed, that was a genocide, but they never talked about it. And for me, the UN being as it is, the United Nations, they only go for countries that have something to offer. And down there in Africa, even though there are a lot of resources, they just weren't. You may not like this, but it's true. They weren't the right color. I don't care what you say. It's just, it is what it is. And it's very true. It is true. Whenever there's a conflict in Europe, but when there's a conflict elsewhere, they get nothing. If you're brown, you don't get too much. If you're black, you better get back because you're not getting nothing. That's just the truth of it. I'm not taking away from anyone's pain. No. What's going on is horrible. Whether if you're black, white, round, brown, pink, yellow, whatever color you are, it's horrible. The loss of life is horrible. But with these United Nations, it seems like that they made it that way for people to be able to feel that way. Now, how I personally feel about it is this. This is my additional personal views for me to stop and think about it. It appears that the Ukraine wants to be a part of the globalist group. Russia is a national group. The globalists will come, man. I'm not. Stay on point. The Ukraine is allowing the globalist groups to come in, and being part of the globalist group, which the United States is a part of, and there's a lot of fighting going on here between being a nationalist, and a globalist, and then the globalist. If you want to be a nationalist, they'll call you a racist, all kinds of wild stuff. And that's what's going on over there. But in this case, how can I say this? It's like whites fighting whites. And so you can't call them a racist. Actually, they do. They call them racist and terrorist. But you just have a group of people over there that just don't want to be a part of the global the global world. They just don't want it. And then you have, and the Ukraine does, or a certain segment of Ukrainians do. But but my thoughts are just this. It's a bad situation. And the Ukraine is basically in a fist fight. The Ukraine is the kid that's getting pounded on because he wants to be a part of the cool kids, but the other kid is like, I don't want these kids near me. These other kids, I don't want them near me. So if you bring them near me, you're going to have an issue. And that's exactly what's going on over there. It's more complex than that. I'm just trying to keep it simple. Mm. Now, you have some Ukrainians coming to the US, and the newspapers that I have been reading and the different videos I have been watching, documentaries, it's going to be interesting. Because right now, people of color here already have a lot of problems already. There's a lot of problems just with the black and white situation here. And then you have situations with immigrants, with other immigrants. And now you have a situation with immigrants and black people that are here. And now you're going to add more to it. I don't know what to say, if it's good or bad. I don't know. But those are just, how I feel about it. I don't think anyone should get hurt or killed. I also don't think people should be forced to, um, the Russian Ukrainians should be forced to be a part of a globalist mindset that they don't want, or a globalist agenda. Then again, those Ukrainians who want to be a part of the globalist agenda should be a part of it. Maybe split Ukraine down the middle and leave the Russian side to the Russians and the Ukrainian Russians to themselves, and the what do you call it, the Europe Ukrainian Ukrainians, and have their side, and they could be a part of the EU and everything else. But what I found interesting was how Finland was like, wait a minute, let me apply for United Nations status. If this is going on in Ukraine, I don't feel so protected. And now you have other countries that talk about, wait a minute, I gave up an opportunity for nuclear power, and now that's going on, and the Ukraine gave up their nukes. Oh, mm. It's going to get worse before it gets better. Oh, these sanctions. These sanctions. Oh man, these sanctions. President Biden is not only going after Putin as far as the sanctions, but it's also hitting the oligarchs. Wow. Wow. I mean, it is really going down, really going down. And the Russian oligarchs most definitely have their stake big time in the US as far as property and land. They're getting rid of it, they're selling things off. And if you weren't able to get into a neighborhood that was like Russian, everything was owned by Russians, the land, this, that, and the other. Now you couldn't get the land, but you could have maybe a store or something like that. And then if you wanted to buy land, they wouldn't let you get it. Now, different. They're like, hey, You remember last year you wanted, yeah, here, you could buy it now. You could buy it. You could buy it. It's very interesting how things are turning. It is what it is. For some people, I mean, the devastation going on over there. Then you have Mexico, Nicaragua, what is it, Brazil? I mean, people are getting hit. These sanctions are really hitting people. Nicaragua is like, hey, come on, Biden, you're messing me up. Mexico's like, hey, you got to ease up because what's going on over there has nothing to do with me, but it's the oligarchs. This is interesting to watch. It's just simply my perspective on it. Me rambling. All right. Whether if you would disagree with me, that is okay. It's just what I think. Doesn't mean it's true. It's what I think. If you like my content, please like and subscribe. Most of all, thank you for stopping by.